At exactly midnight, a phone rang in the fortress of the most dangerous alpha in the Northern Territories. Rowan Theron didn't answer calls. Not at midnight. Not from unknown numbers. Not from anyone who valued their throat intact. But this one made his wolf rise like smoke through his veins, clawing at his ribs, snarling at something he couldn't name yet. He answered. And a woman's voice broke through the line like glass shattering in slow motion. "Your daughter," she whispered, barely audible over the sound of rain-pounding pavement. "She's here. She's freezing. She's a sharp breath." A sob caught halfway. "If you don't come now, she won't make it through the night." Rowan's hand tightened around the phone until the metal groaned. His daughter was dead. Had been dead for 3 years. Buried in the sacred grove with honors sung by every pack in the region. Her name was carved into stone. Her loss had turned him into something colder than winter, sharper than broken bone. So this voice, this trembling, human voice, was either a liar or a ghost. "Where?" he said. Not a question. A command that could strip skin from muscle. The woman rattled off an address on the east side of the city, far from pack territory, far from anywhere wolves should be. Her words tumbled over each other, frantic and unsteady. Then the line went dead. Rowan was already moving. 15 minutes later, his SUV tore through sheets of rain that turned the streets into rivers of reflected neon and shadow. His wolf was a storm inside him, pacing, growling, demanding blood or answers or both. The address led him to a neighborhood that smelled like rust and abandonment, buildings with boarded windows, streetlights flickering like dying stars, gutters choked with trash and rainwater. And there, beneath a torn awning outside a condemned apartment complex, huddled against the wall like something the world had forgotten. A child. Small. Shivering. Soaked through. Dark hair plastered to her face. Rowan's breath stopped. His wolf went silent. Because he knew that face. He knew the shape of her nose, the curve of her jaw, the way her fingers clutched at the threadbare blanket wrapped around her shoulders. His daughter. Alive. Impossible. She looked up as he approached, and her eyes, golden, just like his, went wide with recognition and fear and something else. Something that looked like relief. "Papa." Her voice was so small it nearly disappeared into the rain. Rowan dropped to his knees in the water, not caring about the cold, not caring about anything except the fact that she was real. Solid. Breathing. He pulled her into his arms, and she was too light, too fragile, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She smelled like rain and fear and something bitter wolfsbane, faint but unmistakable. Someone had been dosing her, keeping her weak, keeping her hidden. His wolf snarled, a sound that rattled in his chest like thunder, and the child flinched. "It's okay," he murmured, forcing his voice to soften even as rage built like a tsunami inside him. "You're safe now. I promise." Behind him, a door creaked open. Rowan turned, still holding his daughter, and saw her. The woman. She stood in the doorway of the apartment building, backlit by a single flickering bulb. Human. Or at least, she smelled human, no wolf, no shift, no power that he could sense. Just exhaustion and fear and something beneath it all that made his wolf pause. She was slight, drowned in an oversized jacket that hung off her frame like she'd been wearing it for years. Her hair was tied back in a messy knot, damp from the rain. Her face was pale, hollowed out by sleepless nights and too many missed meals. But her eyes were steel. "You came," she said, and her voice was steadier now, though her hands shook where they gripped the doorframe. "Who are you?" Rowan's words came out low, dangerous, barely controlled. "Someone who kept her alive when your pack wanted her dead." The air between them crackled. Rowan rose to his feet slowly, his daughter still cradled against his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to take his child and leave, to return to pack lands and tear apart everyone who'd lied to him. But something stopped him. The woman took a step forward, into the rain, and he saw the way her jaw was set, the way her spine was straight despite the trembling in her limbs. 3 years ago, she said, her voice cutting through the storm, they brought her to the edge of the city and left her there. A reject. An omega too weak to matter. I found her crying in an alley, covered in bruises, reeking of wolfsbane. Rowan's vision went red at the edges. They told you she was dead because they needed you to believe it. Because a grieving alpha is a distracted alpha. And while you mourned, they consolidated power. They made deals. They. Who? One word. A growl that made the woman's breath hitch. But she didn't look away. Your beta. Your counsel. The wolves you trusted most. The rain pounded harder. Rowan's daughter whimpered against his chest, and he forced himself to breathe, to think past the fury that wanted to tear the world apart. Why call me now? He asked, his voice rough. Why not 3 years ago? The woman's expression flickered, pain, regret, something that looked like shame. Because I was a coward, she said simply. Because I thought I could keep her safe on my own. Because I didn't know if you'd believe me or kill me for knowing too much. She swallowed hard. But tonight she got sick. Fever. Shaking. I don't have the resources to help her anymore. And I realized that keeping her hidden was just another way of letting her die. Rowan studied her. This human woman who had no reason to care about a wolf child. Who had risked everything, her safety, her life, to protect someone else's daughter. What's your name? He asked. Celine. Simple. Quiet. Like it didn't belong to someone who'd just shattered his entire world and rebuilt it in the span of a phone call. Celine, he repeated, testing the weight of it. You're coming with me. Her eyes widened. What? You kept her alive. That means you're not safe here anymore. When my pack realizes I know the truth, they'll come for you. For both of you. I'm human, she said, as if that explained everything. I don't belong in your world. You belonged enough to save her. Celine opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head. I didn't do this for a reward. You called me at midnight and told me my daughter was alive. Rowan's voice dropped, lethal and certain. That makes you part of this whether you want to be or not. The storm raged around them. His daughter stirred against his chest, her small voice muffled. Is Celine coming too? Rowan looked down at the child in his arms, his child, alive, real, safe, and then back at the woman who'd kept her that way. Yes, he said. And he meant it. Because something in his wolf had already decided. This woman wasn't just a witness. She was pack. Whether she knew it yet or not. If you're already hooked and you want to know what happens when an alpha discovers the ultimate betrayal and the woman who's about to change everything, subscribe to Shayla's Romance Library. Because this story is just beginning. Celine didn't want to get in the car. Everything in her screamed to run, back into the apartment, down the alley, anywhere that wasn't within arm's reach of the most powerful predator in the territories. But the child was already buckled into the back seat, wrapped in a blanket Rowan had pulled from somewhere, her golden eyes watching Celine through the rain-streaked window with an expression that twisted something deep in Celine's chest. Trust. The kind of trust Celine hadn't seen directed at her in years. So she opened the passenger door and climbed in, even though her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the handle. Rowan slid into the driver's seat, and the space immediately felt smaller. He was too large, too solid, too present. The air around him hummed with barely restrained power, and Celine's human instincts, the ones that knew she was prey sitting next to an apex predator, screamed at her to move, to flee, to do anything except sit still. But she did. Because the child in the back seat needed her to. The engine roared to life and Rowan pulled away from the curb without a word, his jaw tight, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Silence filled the car like a living thing. Celine stared out the window, watching the city blur past, trying to control her breathing. trying not to think about the fact that she'd just willingly climbed into a vehicle with an alpha who could snap her neck without breaking a sweat. How long have you known? His voice cut through the quiet, low and controlled, but edged with something dangerous. Known what? Don't. The word was a warning. Don't play games with me, Celine. How long have you known who she was? Celine swallowed. From the beginning. She told me her name the first night. Told me her papa was the strongest wolf in the world and that he'd come for her if he knew where she was. Something in Rowan's expression cracked. Just for a moment. Then it was gone, replaced by stone. Why didn't you bring her to me? Because I didn't know if you were the one who wanted her gone. The car swerved slightly. Rowan's head snapped toward her, his eyes flashing gold, and Celine's heart stopped. You thought he couldn't finish the sentence. His wolf was too close to the surface, violence radiating off him in waves. I didn't know, Celine said quickly, pressing herself back against the seat. I didn't know anything except that someone powerful enough to fake a child's death and make an entire pack believe it had to be someone close to you. Someone you trusted. So yes, I considered that it might be you. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, slowly, Rowan's grip on the steering wheel loosened. His breathing evened out. The gold faded from his eyes. You were smart to consider it, he said finally, his voice rough. In this world, trust is the first thing that gets you killed. Celine didn't respond. What could she say to that? They drove for another 10 minutes before Rowan spoke again. You're not afraid of me? It wasn't a question. Celine let out a breath that was almost a laugh. I'm terrified of you. You don't act like it. Because being afraid doesn't help anyone. Least of all her. Celine glanced back at the child, who had fallen asleep against the window, her small chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. She needed someone who wouldn't fall apart. So I didn't. Rowan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. Almost gentle. What did she tell you? About what happened? Celine's throat tightened. Not much. She was 6 when I found her. Traumatized. Half-starved. She had nightmares every night for months, wolves with red eyes, hands holding her down, voices telling her she was broken. Wrong. That she didn't belong. Rowan's jaw clenched so hard Celine heard his teeth grind. She stopped talking about it after a while. Celine continued quietly. Started focusing on survival instead. Learning to read. Helping me at the shelter. Pretending she was just a normal kid. She paused. But she never stopped asking about you. Every birthday. Every holiday. She'd ask if you were coming. If you remembered her. Her voice cracked. If you still loved her. The car filled with a sound that wasn't quite human, a low, broken rumble that came from somewhere deep in Rowan's chest. His daughter. His little girl. Asking if he still loved her. I never stopped, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Not for a single day. I mourned her. He stopped, his hands tightening on the wheel again. They made me bury an empty coffin. Made me stand there and say goodbye to he couldn't finish. Celine felt something crack inside her chest. This man, this terrifying, powerful alpha who could level cities with a word, was breaking. And she didn't know how to help him. She knows, Celine said softly. She always knew you'd come if you could. That's why she never gave up. Even when things were bad. Even when I didn't have enough food or medicine or... She stopped, blinking hard against the burn in her eyes. She never stopped believing in you. Rowan pulled the car over. They were on an empty stretch of road now, trees pressing close on either side, the rain still falling in sheets. He turned to face her fully, and Celine's breath caught. Because his eyes were glowing. Not with anger. With something else. Something that looked like gratitude. You saved her life, he said, his voice steady now, certain. You kept her safe when no one else would. You gave her hope when the world tried to take it away. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze holding hers with an intensity that made her pulse hammer. I don't care if you're human. I don't care if you think you don't belong in my world. You do. Because anyone who protects what's mine is mine to protect in return. Celine's heart slammed against her ribs. I don't need protection, she whispered. Yes, Rowan said quietly, you do. You just don't know it yet. And there was something in the way he said it, something in the way his wolf watched her through his eyes, calm and certain and utterly implacable, that made Celine realize she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She'd stepped into his world. And there was no stepping back out. From the back seat, a small sleepy voice broke the tension. Papa. Rowan's expression softened instantly. He turned, reaching back to brush his daughter's hair from her face. I'm here, little moon. We're almost home. Is Celine staying? Rowan's eyes flicked back to Celine, and something passed between them. Something unspoken but undeniable. Yes, he said. She's staying. And Celine, who had spent 3 years surviving alone, trusting no one, protecting a child who wasn't hers with everything she had, felt something shift inside her. Something that felt dangerously like relief. Like safety. Like home. Even though she knew better. Even though she knew that safety in the world of wolves was an illusion. She nodded once. And Rowan smiled, a small, barely there curve of his mouth that transformed his entire face. Then he pulled back onto the road, driving toward whatever came next, and Celine sat beside him, her heart pounding, her mind spinning, wondering what she'd just agreed to. Wondering if she'd just made the best decision of her life. Or the last one. They arrived at the fortress just before dawn. Celine had expected something cold. Clinical. A compound built for war, not living. Instead, the estate rose from the forest like something out of an old story, stone and timber and glass, sprawling across the hillside with lights glowing warm in the windows. It looked lived in. Loved. Like a home that had stood for generations and would stand for generations more. Rowan carried his daughter inside while Celine followed, her wet shoes squeaking against polished wood floors, her hands tucked into her jacket pockets to hide the trembling. A woman appeared in the hallway, older, silver-haired, with sharp eyes that swept over Celine in one assessing glance before softening as they landed on the child in Rowan's arms. Sweet moon above, the woman breathed. Is that? It's her, Rowan said quietly. Call Dr. Cashin. Tell him to get here now. And wake no one else. No one. Understood. The woman nodded and disappeared down the hall, already pulling out her phone. Rowan carried his daughter upstairs, and Celine followed because she didn't know what else to do. Because the child had reached out a small hand and whispered, "Don't go," and Celine couldn't have left if the building was on fire. The room Rowan took them to was large and warm, with a fireplace already crackling and a bed piled high with blankets. He laid his daughter down gently, tucking the covers around her, his large hands impossibly careful. Then he stepped back and looked at Celine. Stay with her. I'll be back. It wasn't a request. Celine nodded and moved to sit in the chair beside the bed, her legs finally giving out beneath her. The child's eyes fluttered open. Celine? I'm here. Are we safe now? Celine's throat closed. She reached out and took the small hand in hers, feeling how cold the fingers were, how fragile. Yes, sweetheart. You're safe. The child smiled, tired and trusting, and closed her eyes again. And Celine sat there in the firelight, listening to the sound of rain against the windows, and let herself feel, for the first time in 3 years, the weight of what she'd been carrying. The memories came whether she wanted them or not. 3 years ago, Celine had been someone else. Someone with a name that mattered in her community. Someone with a future. She'd been a nursing student working night shifts at a free clinic on the edge of the city, the kind of place where no one asked questions and everyone paid in cash or gratitude or nothing at all. She loved it. Loved feeling useful. Loved the idea that she could make a difference, even a small one, in a world that felt increasingly broken. Then one night, a man had stumbled through the doors bleeding from wounds that shouldn't have existed on a human body. Claw marks. Deep. Shredding. Celine had patched him up, hands steady even as her mind raced with questions she didn't dare ask. He'd left before dawn without a word. 2 nights later, 3 wolves had shown up at her apartment. Not men pretending to be human. Wolves. Massive, silver-eyed, teeth-bared. They dragged her out into the alley behind the building and told her in voices that resonated with power that she'd seen too much. Known too much. That humans who learned about their world didn't get to keep living in it. Celine had begged. Had promised she wouldn't tell anyone. Had sworn on everything she had that she'd forget, that she'd disappear, that she'd do anything. They'd laughed. And then they'd done something worse than kill her. They'd marked her. A bite on her shoulder, deep and deliberate, that burned like acid and left a scar that never fully healed. Rejected, they'd called it. A mark that told every wolf in the territories that she was untouchable. Unwanted. Less than nothing. It didn't matter that she was human. The mark translated across species. She'd lost her job within a week. Her apartment 2 weeks after that. Friends stopped returning her calls. Her family, what little she had, looked at her like she was contaminated. Because she was. In the world of wolves, a rejection mark wasn't just a scar. It was a brand. A warning. A promise that anyone who helped her would be marked too. So Celine had learned to survive alone. Had learned to move through the city like a ghost, taking work that didn't require references, sleeping in shelters or abandoned buildings, keeping her head down and her mouth shut. She'd learned to live with the constant ache in her shoulder, the way it flared hot whenever wolves were near, a warning system she hadn't asked for but couldn't ignore. And then one night, shivering in an alley during a storm not unlike tonight's, she'd heard crying. A child. Small and soaked and trembling, curled up behind a dumpster with bruises on her arms and terror in her golden eyes. Celine should have walked away. Should have known that getting involved with a wolf child, especially one who'd clearly been discarded, would only bring more trouble. But she'd looked into those eyes and seen herself. Rejected. Unwanted. Left to die alone in the dark. So she'd reached out her hand and said, "It's okay. I've got you." And the child had taken it. "You're thinking too loud." Celine startled, looking up to find Rowan standing in the doorway, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Sorry," she said automatically. He moved into the room, quiet despite his size, and checked on his daughter before turning to Celine. "The doctor's on his way. He'll be here within the hour." Celine nodded. Rowan pulled up another chair and sat, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, "You have a rejection mark." Celine's hand flew to her shoulder before she could stop herself. Rowan's eyes tracked the movement, his expression darkening. "I can smell it. Old. Deliberate. Given by wolves who wanted you gone but not dead." "It doesn't matter," Celine said quietly. "It does." His voice was hard. "Who marked you?" "I don't know their names. I don't know their pack. It was 3 years ago, and I was smart enough not to ask questions." "Why did they mark you?" Celine hesitated, then decided there was no point in lying. "Not anymore. Because I helped someone I wasn't supposed to help. Because I saw things I wasn't supposed to see. Because I was human and humans don't get to know about your world and live." Rowan's jaw clenched. "That's not how it works. That's not—" He stopped, breathing hard. "Rejection marks are sacred. They're given to wolves who commit unforgivable crimes against their pack. Using them on humans is easier than killing me," Celine finished. "And more effective. Dead bodies draw attention. Rejected humans just disappear." The silence that followed was heavy. Then Rowan leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "Show me." "What?" "The mark. Show me." Celine's heart hammered. "Why?" "Because I need to see it. I need to know what they did to you. Every instinct told Celine this was a bad idea. But something in his expression, something raw and furious and protective, made her slowly pull down the collar of her jacket and shirt, exposing the scarred skin of her shoulder. The mark was ugly, jagged. A bite that had been meant to hurt, not just mark. Rowan stared at it for a long moment, his expression utterly unreadable. Then he reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and traced the edge of the scar with his fingertips. His touch was gentle, impossibly so. And where his skin met hers, warmth spread, chasing away the constant ache she'd learned to live with. "This shouldn't exist," he said quietly. "This shouldn't have been done to you." Celine's throat tightened. "It doesn't matter anymore." "Yes," Rowan said, his eyes meeting hers, fierce and certain. "It does. Because you're under my protection now. And that means this mark." He pressed his palm flat against her shoulder, and heat bloomed beneath his touch. "Doesn't define you anymore. Not here. Not with me." Something inside Celine cracked. Something she'd been holding together with sheer will and spite and desperation. Tears burned her eyes, and she blinked them back furiously, but one escaped anyway, sliding hot down her cheek. Rowan caught it with his thumb, his expression softening in a way that made him look almost human. "You saved her," he said quietly. "You saved my daughter when the entire world told you not to care. That makes you pack, Celine. Whether you were born wolf or not. Whether you believe it or not." His hand moved from her shoulder to cup her face, his touch impossibly gentle. "And I protect what's mine." Celine couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only sit there, caught in the gravity of his gaze, feeling something shift inside her that she didn't have a name for. Something that felt like belonging. Like home. Like maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found a place where rejection didn't have the last word. The doctor arrived as promised, a lean wolf with silver streaking his dark hair and hands that moved with practiced efficiency. He examined Rowan's daughter, while Celine watched from the corner, her shoulder still warm from where Rowan had touched it. Rowan stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, every muscle tense. "Wolfsbane poisoning," Dr. Cashin said finally, his voice grave. "Long-term exposure. Low doses, administered consistently over years. It suppressed her shift, weakened her immune system, stunted her growth." He looked up at Rowan, his expression dark. Someone wanted her weak. Wanted her unable to defend herself or call for help through the pack bond. Rowan's eyes flashed gold. "Can you fix it?" "With time. The wolfsbane is out of her system now, but the damage will take weeks, maybe months to heal. She'll need rest, proper nutrition," and he hesitated. "And what?" "She'll need to be near pack. Near you. The bond between alpha and child is what will heal her fastest. Your presence, your power, it'll help her wolf remember what it's supposed to be." Rowan nodded once, sharp and final. "Whatever she needs. Whatever it costs." Dr. Cashin packed his bag and left with a promise to return in the morning. And then it was just the three of them again, Celine, Rowan, and the sleeping child whose breathing had finally evened out, whose color had started to return. "You should rest," Rowan said, turning to Celine. "There's a room down the hall. Clean clothes in the closet. Food in the kitchen. Take whatever you need." Celine shook her head. "I'll stay with her." "Celine. She'll be scared if she wakes up alone. I've been with her every night for 3 years. I'm not stopping now." Something flickered across Rowan's face, respect, maybe. Or understanding. He pulled a blanket from the wardrobe and draped it over Celine's shoulders. "Then I'll stay too." And he did. Settled into the chair opposite hers, his long legs stretched out, his eyes never leaving his daughter's face. They sat in silence as the fire crackled and the rain finally stopped and the first pale light of dawn began creeping through the windows. It should have been awkward. Instead, it felt strangely right. Like something clicking into place that had been misaligned for too long. Celine must have dozed off because when she opened her eyes, sunlight was streaming through the windows and Rowan was gone. Panic jolted through her until she saw his daughter sitting up in bed, eyes open, looking more alert than she had in weeks. Celine. The child's face split into a smile. We're really here. I didn't dream it. Celine moved to the bed and pulled the girl into a hug, feeling the small arms wrapped tight around her neck. You didn't dream it. Your papa found you. You're home. Are you home too? The question hit harder than it should have. Celine pulled back, brushing hair from the child's face. I'm wherever you need me to be. I need you here. Then I'm here. The door opened and Rowan entered carrying a tray laden with food, eggs, toast, fruit, juice. He set it on the bedside table and crouched beside the bed, his expression soft in a way that transformed him completely. Good morning, little moon. Papa. She reached for him, and he gathered her up, careful of her fragility, holding her like she was made of spun glass and starlight. Celine watched them, something warm and aching blooming in her chest. This was what she'd fought for. This moment. This reunion. It had all been worth it. After breakfast, after the child had eaten more than Celine had seen her eat in months, Rowan carried her to a different room. This one was at the heart of the house, circular, with windows that looked out over the forest. But what caught Celine's attention was the center of the room. A stone altar. Ancient. Worn smooth by centuries of touch. Symbols carved into the surface that Celine didn't recognize, but that made her skin prickle with awareness. This is the heart of the pack, Rowan said quietly, settling his daughter on a cushioned bench. Where we connect to those who came before. Where we honor the bonds that hold us together. He knelt before the altar and placed both hands flat against the stone. The air shifted. Celine felt it like pressure against her skin, like the moment before lightning strikes. The symbols on the altar began to glow, faint at first, then brighter, pulsing with a light that seemed to come from within the stone itself. Rowan's daughter gasped. Papa, what's happening? I'm calling the ancestors, he said, his voice deeper now, resonating with power. I'm asking them to witness your return. To recognize you as mine. As pack. As protected. The light intensified, spreading from the altar to fill the room with a soft golden radiance. And then Celine saw them. Shapes in the light. Translucent, shimmering, but unmistakably there. Wolves. Dozens of them, standing in a circle around the room, their eyes glowing, their forms massive and beautiful and terrifying. The ancestors. Watching. Judging. One of them, larger than the rest, a silver wolf with scars across its muzzle, stepped forward. It moved to Rowan's daughter and lowered its great head, sniffing her hair, her face. Then it turned to Celine. And every instinct screamed at her to run. But she stood frozen as the silver wolf approached, its eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that stripped her bare. It sniffed her shoulder, where the rejection mark sat like a brand. The wolf's lips pulled back in a snarl that rattled the windows. No, Rowan said sharply, rising to his feet. She's under my protection. The mark doesn't matter. The silver wolf turned to him, and something passed between them, a conversation without words, a battle of wills that made the air crackle. Finally, the wolf huffed and stepped back. But before it faded, it did something Celine didn't expect. It pressed its nose to her marked shoulder. And the constant ache, the pain she'd lived with for 3 years, vanished. Just gone. Celine gasped, her hand flying to her shoulder, feeling the scar but not the hurt. The silver wolf faded into light. The other ancestors followed, one by one, until the room was just a room again. Rowan turned to Celine, his expression unreadable. The ancestors have accepted you. What does that mean? It means you belong here. Truly. Not just because I say so, but because they do. Because he stopped, something flickering in his eyes. Because there's a reason you were the one to find her. A reason you survived what should have killed you. A reason your mark was acknowledged and forgiven. Celine's heart hammered. I don't understand. Neither do I. Not yet. Rowan moved closer, his gaze searching hers. But the ancestors don't appear for nothing. They don't acknowledge humans. Ever. Unless what? He hesitated, then said quietly, unless you're not as human as you think you are. The words hung in the air like smoke. Celine shook her head. That's impossible. I'm not, I can't. Can't you? Rowan reached out and took her hand, pressing her palm flat against the altar. The stone pulsed beneath her touch. Warm. Alive. Responding. And Celine felt something inside her answer, something buried deep, something that had been sleeping her entire life. A whisper. A pull. A sense of recognition that made her breath catch. What is that? She whispered. I don't know, Rowan said. But we're going to find out. From the bench, his daughter spoke, her voice small and odd. Celine glows. Celine looked down at her hands and saw it, a faint shimmer beneath her skin, like moonlight caught in her veins. It faded as quickly as it appeared. But it had been there. Real. Undeniable. There's a prophecy, Rowan said quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. An old one. About a woman marked by wolves, but not broken. A woman who walks between worlds. Who saves what was lost and awakens what was sleeping. He paused. A woman who carries the light of the first pack. Celine's legs felt weak. That's not me. Isn't it? Rowan's hand tightened around hers. You were marked and survived. You saved my daughter when no one else could. You just made the ancestors appear and one of them healed you. His voice dropped. And now the altar is responding to your touch like it hasn't responded to anyone outside my bloodline in generations. Celine pulled her hand back, shaking her head. I'm nobody. I'm just... You're not nobody, his daughter said, sliding off the bench to stand beside Celine, her small hand finding Celine's. You're magic. I always knew it. Tears burned Celine's eyes. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. She was human. Ordinary. Broken. Wasn't she? But the warmth still humming beneath her skin said otherwise. The mark on her shoulder that no longer hurt said otherwise. The way the ancestors had looked at her, not with contempt, but with recognition, said otherwise. I don't know what I am, she whispered. Rowan stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, but somehow steadying. Then we'll figure it out together. And despite everything, despite the fear and confusion and the impossibility of it all, Celine believed him. Because for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't alone. And whatever she was becoming, whatever truth was waiting to be uncovered, she wouldn't have to face it by herself. The fragile peace lasted exactly 3 days. 3 days of watching Rowan's daughter grow stronger, her color returning, her laugh filling the house like music Celine had forgotten existed. 3 days of Celine learning the rhythms of pack life, the way wolves moved through the house like water, fluid and purposeful. The way they looked at Rowan with respect that bordered on reverence. The way they looked at her with curiosity that bordered on suspicion. 3 days of Rowan watching her like he was trying to solve a puzzle that kept changing shape. Then the beta returned. Celine was in the kitchen helping prepare lunch when she felt it, a shift in the air, a tension that made her marked shoulder prickle with warning. Wolves began gathering in the main hall, their voices low and urgent. Something was wrong. Celine moved to the doorway and saw him. Tall, broad-shouldered, handsome in a way that felt calculated, like he knew exactly what angles made him look trustworthy. Dark hair swept back from a face that wore concern like a well-fitted mask. But his eyes were cold. He strode through the entrance with 4 other wolves flanking him, all of them radiating authority, all of them looking at the gathered pack like they owned them. Rowan, the man called, his voice carrying easily through the space. We came as soon as we heard. Is it true? Is she really? He stopped. Because Rowan's daughter had appeared at the top of the stairs, her hand gripping the banister, her golden eyes wide. The beta's face went white, then red, then carefully, perfectly blank. Kaya, he breathed, using a name Celine had never heard before. You're alive. The child, Kaya, pressed closer to the wall, and Celine saw fear flash across her face before she buried it. That was all Celine needed to see. She moved before thinking, climbing the stairs to stand between Kaya and the beta's line of sight, her body a shield even though she knew it was useless against wolves. The beta's eyes snapped to her, and something flickered in their depths. Recognition. Then calculation. "And who is this?" he asked, his tone pleasant but his gaze sharp as glass. "Her name is Celine," Rowan said, appearing from a side corridor, his presence immediately dominating the space. "She's the one who kept Kaya alive. She's under my protection." The beta's smile never wavered. "How fortunate. We're all grateful, of course. But I'm sure you understand, Alpha, that there are questions that need answering. Kaya was declared dead 3 years ago. The pack mourned. Resources were allocated. And now she simply reappears." He spread his hands. "Surely you see how this looks." "How does it look, Torin?" Rowan's voice was soft. "Dangerous." The beta, Torin, tilted his head. "Like someone made a grave mistake. Like someone failed in their duty to verify death before declaring it. Like someone needs to be held accountable." "I agree," Rowan said. "Someone does." The air went electric. Torin's smile tightened. "Then we're on the same page. I'll convene the council immediately. We'll conduct a full investigation into who was responsible for." "You were responsible." The words fell like stones into still water. Torin's expression didn't change. "I'm sorry. You were in charge of the search party that found her body. You were the one who identified her remains. You were the one who brought me the news and stood beside me as I buried an empty coffin." Rowan descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. "So yes, Torin. Someone needs to be held accountable. And we're looking at him." The wolves in the hall shifted, uneasy energy rippling through them. Torin raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Rowan, I understand you're upset. This is an emotional time. But accusing me without evidence. I have evidence." Rowan stopped 3 steps from the bottom, eye level with his beta. Dr. Cashin found wolfsbane in Kaya's system. Years' worth. Someone was dosing her to keep her weak, to keep her from shifting, to keep her from calling for help through the pack bond. His eyes blazed gold. Someone wanted her hidden. And the only wolves who knew where she was are the ones who put her there. Murmurs erupted through the hall. Torin's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "This is serious accusation, Alpha. But surely you don't think that any of us would harm a child." "Your child." The pack's heir. He looked around at the gathered wolves. "We loved Kaya. We mourned her. This accusation is insulting to everyone who grieved." "Then explain how she ended up in the city," Rowan said quietly. "Alone. Terrified. Bruised. Explain how she was left in an alley to die, and no one from this pack noticed. No one searched. No one questioned. Because we were told she was dead." Torin's mask slipped, just slightly, frustration bleeding through. "We were told by you that the search was over, that there was nothing more to be done. We trusted your grief, Rowan." "We." "Liar." The word came from the top of the stairs. Kaya. Small and pale, but standing straight, her hands clenched at her sides. Every eye turned to her. "You're lying," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "You were there. In the forest. You held me down while her breath hitched. While they hurt me. While they said I was wrong. Broken. That I'd ruin everything." Torin's face remained impassive. "Kaya, you were very young. Traumatized. It's understandable that your memories might be. I remember your voice." Tears streamed down her face now, but she didn't stop. "You said Papa would never forgive me if he knew what I was. You said I had to disappear. That it was the only way to keep the pack safe." The hall erupted. Wolves shouting, some in disbelief, some in anger, the noise rising to a roar. Rowan's power slammed down like a physical weight, forcing every wolf in the room to their knees. Silence fell. He stood at the bottom of the stairs, his eyes blazing, his wolf so close to the surface that his form seemed to shimmer. "Everyone out," he said, his voice carrying the absolute authority of an alpha who would not be disobeyed. "Except Torin and his lieutenants. Now." The hall cleared in seconds. Celine started to move, to take Kaya and go, but Rowan's voice stopped her. "Celine stays." She froze. Torin's eyes cut to her, and this time there was no warmth in them. Only calculation. Threat. "The human has no place in pack business," he said. "She has every place. She's the one who saved what you tried to destroy." Rowan's attention fixed on Torin like a blade. "Now tell me why. Tell me why you needed my daughter dead." Torin was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled. And it was nothing like the pleasant mask he'd worn before. This smile was cold, sharp, satisfied. "Because she's not just your daughter," he said quietly. "She's the fulfillment of a prophecy you've ignored for 30 years. The child born under the silver moon. The one marked by the old magic. The one who would either unite the territories or burn them to ash." He took a step forward. "And I'll be damned if I let some half-blood whelp destroy everything we've built." Rowan's growl rattled the windows. But Torin wasn't finished. His eyes slid to Celine, and his smile widened. "And you stupid, broken human. Do you really think the ancestors acknowledged you because you're special? Because you're chosen?" He laughed, bitter and cold. "They acknowledged you because you carry death. The mark on your shoulder isn't a rejection, it's a warning. You're the other half of the prophecy. The shadow to her light. The one who brings the reckoning." Celine's blood went cold. The child who survived and the woman who shouldn't have. Torin's voice dropped. "Together, you'll tear this world apart. So forgive me, Alpha, if I tried to prevent the apocalypse." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Kaya spoke, her voice small but steady. "I don't want to tear anything apart. I just want my papa." And Celine, staring at this man who had tried to murder a child to prevent a prophecy, who had marked her and left her to die, felt something inside her shift. The shimmer beneath her skin flared. Hot. Bright. Furious. "You're right about one thing," she said, her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. "I do carry something. But it's not death." She climbed down the stairs until she stood beside Rowan, her shoulder brushing his arm. "It's the will to survive. And the fury of everyone you've ever tried to break." Light bloomed beneath her skin, visible now, undeniable. Not moonlight. Sunlight. Golden and fierce and utterly unafraid. Torin's smile finally faltered. And Rowan, standing beside her, let his wolf rise fully, his form expanding, power radiating from him in waves. "You wanted a reckoning," Rowan said, his voice no longer entirely human. "You're about to get one." Torin's lieutenants shifted, preparing to fight or flee. But before anyone could move, the front doors blew open. Wolves poured in. Not from Rowan's pack. From elsewhere. 12. 24. More. All of them bearing the marks of other territories, other alphas. And at their head, a woman. Tall. Silver-haired. Ancient. Her eyes glowed white as she surveyed the scene, her power making the air thick and hard to breathe. "Enough," she said, and her voice carried the weight of centuries. "The council has been summoned. The prophecy cannot be stopped or started by the will of one traitor." Her gaze fixed on Torin. "You will stand trial. And you," she looked at Kaya, then at Celine, her expression unreadable. "You will be tested." Rowan moved in front of both of them, protective and immovable. "They're under my protection." "And yet," the woman said softly, "the prophecy cares nothing for protection. Only truth." She raised her hand. And the world went white. When the light faded, they were somewhere else. Not the hall. Not the house. A forest. Ancient. Primal. The trees so tall their tops disappeared into mist, their trunks wider than cars. The air hummed with power that made Celine's teeth ache and her marked shoulder burn, not with pain, but with recognition. This place was old. Older than cities. Older than borders. Older than the divisions between wolf and human and whatever Celine was becoming. Rowan stood beside her, his hand immediately finding hers, grounding her. Kaya pressed against her other side, trembling but silent. The silver-haired woman stood before them, flanked by 5 others, alphas, Celine realized. She could feel their power pressing against her skin like a physical weight. The Council of Territories. Where are we? Rowan demanded, his voice hard. The first grove, the woman replied. Where the original packs made their oaths. Where truth cannot hide. Her white eyes fixed on Celine. Where prophecies reveal themselves. My daughter and Celine have done nothing wrong, Rowan said, positioning himself between them and the council. Whatever Torin told you. Torin told us nothing we didn't already know. The woman's expression was unreadable. The prophecy has been documented for 3 centuries. The child born under the silver moon who carries the old magic. The marked one who walks between worlds. Together, they will either restore the balance or shatter it completely. She gestured, and the air shimmered. Images formed in the mist between the trees. A child with golden eyes standing in a circle of fire. A woman with a glowing mark facing down an army. Both of them together, hands clasped, as the world around them either bloomed with light or crumbled to ash. 2 futures. 2 possibilities. The prophecy is clear, another alpha said, his voice grave. But interpretation is not. Some believe they are our salvation. Others believe they are our doom. And you? Rowan's question was sharp as a blade. What do you believe? The silver-haired woman tilted her head. I believe in testing truth, not trusting fear. She turned to Kaya. Child, come forward. Kaya's hand tightened around Celine's. Celine squeezed back, then gently released her. It's okay, she whispered. I'm right here. Kaya walked forward, small and brave, until she stood before the council. The woman knelt, bringing herself eye level with the child. Do you know what you are? I'm Kaya, the girl said quietly. Daughter of Rowan Theron. Alpha's blood. Yes, but you're more than that, aren't you? The woman's voice was surprisingly gentle. You feel it. The pull. The magic that lives in your bones and sings in your blood. The power that frightened those who should have protected you. Kaya's eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean to be scary. Sometimes things happen when I'm upset. Things break. Or burn. Or, her voice cracked. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Magic is not meant to be controlled when you're 6 years old and terrified, the woman said firmly. Magic is meant to be taught. Nurtured. Honored. She placed a hand on Kaya's shoulder. What was done to you is wrong. Cruel. And it will be answered for. She stood, turning her attention to Celine. Now you. Come forward. Celine's legs felt like water, but she moved anyway, stepping past Rowan even as every instinct screamed to hide behind him. The woman studied her with those unnerving white eyes. You carry a rejection mark given by wolves who feared what you represented. Yet you survived. Why? I don't know, Celine said honestly. I just refused to die. And when you found the child, why didn't you turn her over to authorities? To other wolves? Why risk everything to keep her? Celine's throat tightened. Because she reminded me of myself. Because she deserved someone who wouldn't give up on her. Because she stopped, then pushed forward. Because loving someone shouldn't be conditional on whether they're convenient or comfortable. It should just be. Something flickered in the woman's expression. Approval, maybe. Show me your mark. Celine pulled down her collar, exposing the scarred shoulder. The woman leaned close, studying it. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed. Of course, she murmured. Of course it would be this one. What does that mean? Rowan asked, his voice tight. The woman straightened. This mark is not a rejection. It's a seal. A protection placed by wolves who knew exactly what she was and tried to keep her hidden until the time was right. Celine's world tilted. That's not, they tried to kill me. They told me I was nothing. They lied, the woman said simply. Because the truth would have drawn every wolf in the territories to you. Some to protect, others to destroy. She traced a symbol in the air, and it glowed the same gold as the light beneath Celine's skin. You are a light-bearer. First of your line in 500 years. The balance to shadow magic. The answer to darkness that feeds on fear. Silence fell over the grove. Celine shook her head. I'm human. I don't have. You carry the light of the sun in your veins. The first pack was not just wolf. They were balance, moon and sun, shadow and light, animal and human combined. Over centuries, the lines separated, diluted, until there were only wolves and humans and the magic between them faded to myth. The woman's eyes blazed. Until you. And Kaya. Rowan's voice was rough. Carries the moon. The silver magic. The power of transformation and truth. The woman looked between Celine and Kaya. Separately, you are formidable. Together, she gestured at the images still shimmering in the mist. Together, you could reshape the world. Or destroy it, another alpha said darkly. The prophecy doesn't promise salvation. It promises change. And change is dangerous. Change is necessary, the silver-haired woman countered. Our world is breaking. Territories fighting over scraps of power. Humans encroaching on sacred lands. Magic fading from the earth because we've forgotten how to honor it. She turned to face the other alphas. If these two are the answer, then we teach them. Guide them. We don't fear them. And if they can't be guided? The question came from a younger alpha, his expression hard. If the power overwhelms them? If they become the very threat the prophecy warns against? Then we deal with it, Rowan said, his voice carrying absolute authority. But we don't condemn them before they've had a chance to choose their own path. The alphas exchanged glances. Finally, the silver-haired woman nodded. The council will not interfere. Yet? But they will be watched. Tested. And if they prove to be a threat. They won't, Rowan said flatly. Your faith is admirable, Rowan Theron. But faith alone won't protect them from what's coming. She looked at Celine and Kaya. Torin was not acting alone. There are others who fear the prophecy. Others who will do anything to prevent it, including killing both of you. Let them try, Rowan growled. The woman smiled, thin and sharp. They will. The grove dissolved, and they were back in the house. But not the hall. Rowan's private quarters. A space Celine had never seen before, large and warm, with a massive stone fireplace and windows that overlooked the forest. Books lined the walls, and the furniture was worn in a way that spoke of comfort, not display. Kaya immediately collapsed onto the couch, exhausted, and within moments she was asleep. Rowan stood at the window, his shoulders tight, his hands clenched. Celine didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to process any of what had just happened. Light bearer. Prophecy. The balance to Kaya's silver magic. It was too much. Too impossible. I don't know how to be what they want me to be, she said quietly. Rowan turned, his expression fierce. Then don't be what they want. Be what you are. I don't know what I am. He crossed the room in 3 strides and cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. You're the woman who saved my daughter. Who survived when you should have died. Who stood up to a traitor and a council of alphas without flinching. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. You're brave. And stubborn. And stronger than you realize. That's what you are. Celine's breath caught. What if I fail? What if I can't control this power? What if they're right to fear me? Then I'll be there, Rowan said simply. When you fall, I'll catch you. When you doubt, I'll remind you. When the world tries to break you, his voice dropped, rough and raw. I'll stand between you and every damn thing that wants to hurt you. Tears burned her eyes. Why? Why would you do that for me? Something flickered across his face. Uncertainty. Vulnerability. As if he was about to say something that terrified him more than any enemy. Because somewhere between that midnight phone call and right now, you became mine to protect. His voice was barely above a whisper. And I don't know how to stop feeling like I'd burn the world down if it meant keeping you safe. The air between them went electric. Celine's heart slammed against her ribs. Rowan. I know, he said quickly. I know it's too fast. Too much. I know you don't owe me anything and you can walk away right now if you want to. But he stopped, jaw clenched. I needed you to know that you're not alone, that you matter, that Celine kissed him, rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his, cutting off whatever he was going to say because words felt insufficient for the emotion flooding her chest. For a heartbeat, Rowan went still. Then he made a sound low in his throat, something between a growl and a groan, and pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair, the other wrapping around her waist. The kiss deepened. Desperate. Searching. Like they were both trying to anchor themselves to something real in a world that had become unrecognizable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rowan rested his forehead against hers. Tell me to stop, he whispered. Tell me this is too fast and I'll. Don't stop, Celine said, her voice shaking. Don't you dare stop. So he didn't. He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent, like she was something precious he was afraid of breaking. And Celine, who had spent 3 years believing she was broken, unwanted, marked for death, finally felt whole. Later, when Kaya was still sleeping and the fire had burned down to embers, they sat together on the couch, Celine tucked against Rowan's side, his arm around her shoulders. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now. Rowan's hand traced absent patterns on her arm. Now we prepare. We train you. We figure out what your power means and how to control it. We keep Kaya safe. We root out everyone in the pack who sided with Torin. His jaw tightened. And we survive whatever comes next. That's a lot. Yes. What if I'm not strong enough? Rowan turned her face toward his expression fierce. You kept a child alive for 3 years with no resources, no help, and a mark that should have killed you. You stood up to me, to the council, to wolves who could tear you apart without breaking a sweat. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. If anyone is strong enough, it's you. Celine wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that she could be what the prophecy needed. What Kaya needed. What Rowan was starting to need. But fear still whispered in the back of her mind. What if she failed? What if the power overwhelmed her? What if she became the very monster they feared? As if sensing her thoughts, Rowan pulled her closer. Whatever happens, he said quietly, we face it together. You're not alone anymore, Celine. And you never will be again. And wrapped in his arms, listening to Kaya's soft breathing and the crackle of dying embers, Celine let herself believe. Just for a moment. That maybe, just maybe, she could have this. Safety. Belonging. Love. Even if the world was about to demand she fight for it. The next 2 weeks were a blur of training and revelation. Celine learned that the light beneath her skin wasn't just decorative. It was power. Raw, ancient, and terrifying in its potential. Under the guidance of the silver-haired woman, whose name was Astrid, and who had been an alpha longer than some countries had existed, Celine learned to call the light forward. To shape it. To wield it like a weapon or a shield. It hurt. Every time she pulled the power to the surface, it burned through her veins like liquid gold, leaving her gasping and shaking. But slowly, she learned to bear it. To channel it without collapsing. Kaya trained too. Her silver magic manifested differently, in transformation, in healing, in the ability to sense truth through lies. She was young, still learning control, but even Astrid admitted she'd never seen potential like this in someone so small. Rowan watched them both with an expression that made Celine's heart ache. Pride, fear, love, all tangled together. And at night, when Kaya was asleep and the house was quiet, Rowan would find Celine. They'd sit together by the fire, talking or not talking, his presence a steady anchor in a world that felt increasingly unstable. Sometimes they kissed. Sometimes they just existed in the same space, breathing the same air, drawing comfort from proximity. Celine had never felt safer. Which should have been her first warning. The betrayal came on the night of the full moon. The pack had gathered in the clearing behind the house for the monthly hunt, a sacred ritual where wolves ran together, reinforcing bonds, celebrating their nature. Celine had been invited to watch. She stood at the edge of the clearing with Kaya, both of them wrapped in warm cloaks, as dozens of wolves shed their human forms and became something wild and beautiful. Rowan's wolf was magnificent. Massive, dark-furred, with eyes that glowed gold even in his shifted form. He moved through the pack like a king, commanding without effort, and every wolf that approached him lowered their head in respect. Celine felt something warm bloom in her chest watching him. This was his world, his truth. And somehow, impossibly, she was part of it now. "He's the strongest," Kaya whispered, her eyes shining with pride. "Nobody can beat my papa." Celine squeezed her hand. "I believe it." The pack began to move, flowing into the forest like a silver river under moonlight. The sound of their howls rose into the night sky, primal and haunting and achingly beautiful. Celine watched until they disappeared into the trees. Then she felt it. A prickle of warning across her marked shoulder. She turned and found herself surrounded. Not by Rowan's wolves. By others. A dozen of them, emerging from the shadows, their eyes reflecting the moonlight like mirrors. They wore human faces, but radiated predatory intent. Celine. One of them stepped forward, a woman with sharp features and cold eyes. "We need you to come with us." "Who are you?" Celine shifted, putting herself between the woman and Kaya. "Friends of Torin. Believers in the old ways." The woman smiled, but it was all teeth. "We're here to prevent a mistake." Kaya's hand tightened in Celine's. "Where's Papa?" "Running. As he should be. By the time he realizes you're gone, it'll be too late." Celine's power stirred beneath her skin, responding to the threat. "You're not taking her." "We don't want the child," the woman said. "Not yet. We want you." Before Celine could respond, two wolves lunged. She threw up her hands instinctively and light exploded outward, blinding, searing, driving the wolves back with yelps of pain. But there were too many. They came from all sides, and Celine's control was still fragile, still new. She managed to drive back three more, but then one got through her guard, slamming into her side and sending her sprawling. Kaya screamed. And something in Celine snapped. The light didn't just flare. It erupted. A wave of golden radiance that turned night into day, that sent every attacking wolf flying backward, that scorched the grass and made the trees creak and groan. When it faded, Celine was on her knees, gasping, her entire body shaking from the effort. The wolves circled again, more cautious now, but still advancing. "Impressive," the woman said. "But uncontrolled. You'll burn yourself out before you stop all of us." She was right. Celine could feel it, the power draining her, threatening to consume her from the inside out. She'd learned to use it, but not how to sustain it. A wolf lunged for Kaya. Celine threw herself forward, light blazing from her hands, and managed to deflect the attack. But another came from behind. Claws raked across her back, shredding skin, sending her forward with a cry of pain. Kaya was sobbing now, her small hands glowing silver as her own magic tried to manifest, but she was too young, too scared, unable to control it. Celine tried to stand, to protect her, but her legs wouldn't hold. Too much power used too fast. She was done. The woman approached, crouching in front of Celine with that cold smile still in place. "You could have been useful," she said. "Could have helped us restore the old ways, keep humans in their place, maintain the natural order. But instead, you chose to play house with an alpha who's gone soft." She tilted her head. "Such a waste." Celine spat blood. "Go to hell." The woman laughed. "Oh, we're all going there eventually. Some of us just know how to take company." She raised her hand, claws extending. And then a roar split the night. Not a wolf's howl. Something deeper. Older. Filled with a fury that made the earth tremble. Rowan exploded from the tree line in his wolf form, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. He hit the woman before she could react, jaws closing around her throat, and she went down without a sound. The other wolves scattered, but not fast enough. The entire pack had returned, flooding the clearing, surrounding the attackers with snarling fury and teeth that gleamed in the moonlight. It was over in moments. The attackers subdued or fled, leaving only corpses and the scent of blood and fear heavy in the air. Rowan shifted, his human form reappearing as he dropped to his knees beside Celine, his hands frantically checking her wounds. "Celine. Celine, look at me." She managed to focus on his face, on the terror there, the rage, the desperate fear. "I'm okay," she mumbled. "Kaya. She's safe. She's right here." He pulled them both into his arms, holding them like he was afraid they'd disappear if he let go. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have known they'd try something. I should have." "Not your fault," Celine whispered. Her back was on fire, but she was alive. They were alive. "We're okay." But even as she said it, she felt something else. A shift in the pack's energy. Wolves gathering close, staring not at the bodies of the attackers, but at her. At the scorch marks on the ground where her power had burned. At the way the grass had withered in a perfect circle around where she'd stood. At the destruction she'd caused trying to protect one child. Fear. She could smell it on them. See it in their eyes. One wolf, young, barely more than a teenager, took a step back. "She's dangerous," he whispered. "Did you see what she did? She almost killed them just by existing." "She was defending herself," Rowan growled, his voice carrying alpha command. "She was defending my daughter." "And what happens when she loses control completely?" an older woman asked, her voice shaking. "What happens when that power turns on us? On our families?" "It won't," Rowan started. "You don't know that." The woman's voice rose. "The prophecy says she'll either save us or destroy us. And I just watched her burn a hole through solid ground. Tell me, Alpha, which future are we looking at?" Silence fell. Heavy. Damaging. Celine could feel it, the pack's faith cracking, fear seeping in where trust had been. She pulled away from Rowan, forcing herself to stand despite the pain screaming through her back. "I would never hurt you," she said, her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. "I would never hurt any of you. I only used my power because we were being attacked. Because Kaya. Because you're unstable," another voice cut in. A man Celine recognized from council meetings. "Because you don't know how to control what you are. Because having you here puts all of us at risk." "Enough." Rowan's roar silenced everyone. "Celine is under my protection. She is pack. And anyone who questions that questions me." But even as he said it, Celine could see the doubt. The fear spreading like poison through the gathered wolves. They didn't trust her. And worse, they were starting not to trust Rowan's judgment about her. Astrid appeared at the edge of the clearing, her white eyes taking in the scene with a single glance. "The council needs to be informed," she said quietly. "This attack, combined with Celine's display of power, it changes things." "No," Rowan said flatly. "Nothing changes. She stays. She's protected. End of discussion." Astrid's expression was pitying. "Rowan, the pack is afraid. And fear makes people dangerous. If you force this, you'll lose them. Or worse, you'll force them to choose between you and their safety. Then they choose me, Rowan said. I'm their alpha. You're an alpha in love, Astrid said gently. And that makes you blind. The words hung in the air like accusation. Rowan's jaw clenched, but he didn't deny it. Couldn't deny it. Because everyone could see the truth written across his face every time he looked at Celine. And that truth was exactly what made them doubt his judgment. Celine felt something inside her crack. She'd done this. By being what she was. By existing. By trying to protect Kaya. She'd put a wedge between Rowan and his pack. She'd made him choose. I should go, she said quietly. No, Rowan's hand found hers, gripping tight. You're not going anywhere. Rowan, they're afraid of me. And they're right to be. I almost lost control tonight. I could have, her voice broke. I could have killed all of them without meaning to. Without even wanting to. You didn't. But I could have. Tears burned her eyes. And next time I might not be able to stop it. Next time. There won't be a next time, Rowan said fiercely. We'll train harder. We'll figure this out. But you're not leaving. Celine looked at him, at this powerful alpha who was willing to risk everything for her, and felt her heart break. Because she loved him. Somewhere in the chaos and fear and impossible circumstances, she'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with him. And that was exactly why she had to leave. I'm sorry, she whispered. Then she pulled her hand free, called her power one more time despite the agony it caused, and ran. Light blazed behind her as she disappeared into the forest, moving faster than she'd ever moved, driven by heartbreak and fear and the desperate need to put distance between herself and everyone she loved before she destroyed them. Behind her, she heard Rowan roar her name. Heard Kaya scream. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because the woman was right. The pack was right. She was dangerous. And the people she loved most would be the first ones burned if she stayed. Celine ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. She collapsed in a ravine miles from pack lands, her back screaming where claws had torn skin, her power flickering weakly beneath her surface like a dying flame. She'd done the right thing. She'd left before she could hurt anyone else. Before her lack of control could turn her into the monster they feared. So why did it feel like she'd ripped out her own heart and left it bleeding in that clearing? She curled into herself, pressing her forehead against cold stone, and let the tears come. For 3 years she'd survived alone. She could do it again. She had to. She must have passed out because when she woke, the sun was high and someone was standing over her. Not Rowan. Not anyone from the pack. Torin. Celine's breath stopped. He looked different than he had in the hall, harder, leaner, with something feral in his eyes that hadn't been there before. His clothes were torn, dirt and blood staining the fabric. He'd escaped. Hello, Lightbearer, he said, his voice pleasant despite the rage simmering beneath it. Running away? How disappointingly human of you. Celine tried to call her power, but nothing came. She was too drained, too broken. Defenseless. The pack will find you, she rasped. Rowan will. Rowan is busy, Torin cut her off. Busy dealing with the chaos you left behind. The pack fracturing. Wolves choosing sides. Some loyal to their alpha, others demanding you be hunted down before you become the threat we all know you are. He crouched, tilting his head. It's amazing how quickly fear spreads, isn't it? Celine's stomach dropped. What did you do? Me? Nothing. You did it all yourself. He smiled. You showed them exactly what you're capable of. Showed them the destruction. The loss of control. And now they're terrified. Some want you dead. Others want you locked away. None of them want you near their families. He leaned closer. You played right into my hands. You planned this, Celine whispered. The attack. You knew I'd defend myself. Knew I'd lose control. Knew it would turn the pack against me. Guilty. Torin's smile widened. I couldn't kill you directly, not with Rowan protecting you. But I could make you kill yourself. Metaphorically speaking. Make you so afraid of your own power that you'd run. He stood, brushing dirt from his pants. And now here you are. Alone. Weak. Perfect. For what? For leverage. He grabbed her arm, hauling her upright despite her gasp of pain. You see, the prophecy works both ways. The light bearer and the silver child together can reshape the world. But the light bearer alone? She's just a weapon. Unstable, dangerous, and very, very useful to the right person. Celine tried to pull away, but her body wouldn't cooperate. I won't help you. You won't have a choice. Torin began dragging her up the ravine. There are others like me. Others who believe the old ways must be preserved. Who won't let some half-blood child and a broken human destroy everything we've built. His grip tightened bruisingly. And they're very interested in meeting you. They emerged from the ravine into a clearing where a dozen wolves waited. Not Rowan's pack. Rogues. Exiles. Wolves with scars and hard eyes and the desperate energy of those with nothing left to lose. At their center stood a man who made Celine's skin crawl. Ancient. Skeletal. With eyes that glowed red instead of gold. So this is the light bearer, he said, his voice like gravel over bone. How disappointing. She looks half dead already. She's strong enough, Torin said, shoving Celine forward. She just doesn't know it yet. The ancient wolf circled her slowly. The prophecy speaks of balance. Light and shadow. Sun and moon. But what it doesn't say is that balance requires sacrifice. He stopped in front of her. One must burn so the other can rise. One must die so the other can live. You're wrong, Celine said, her voice steadier than she felt. The prophecy doesn't require death. It requires choice. Does it? The ancient wolf smiled, revealing teeth too sharp, too many. Then choose. Give us your power willingly. Let us harness it to restore the old ways and the child lives. Refuse, and we'll take the power anyway, and everyone you love will burn. Celine's heart hammered. You can't take it. It's not something that can be transferred. No, he agreed. But it can be drained. Consumed. Your light can feed our darkness. And once you're empty, once you're nothing but a husk, the child will have no counterbalance. No protection. She'll be easy to control. To shape. To use. Horror flooded through Celine. They weren't trying to prevent the prophecy. They were trying to twist it. To take her power and use it to control Kaya. I'll kill you first, she said. The ancient wolf laughed. With what? You're barely standing. He was right. Celine had nothing left. No power. No strength. No way to fight. She'd run to protect everyone she loved. And instead, she delivered herself straight into the hands of people who would use her to destroy them. The ancient wolf raised his hand, and darkness began pooling in his palm, viscous, writhing, alive. Shadow magic. The opposite of her light. This will hurt, he said almost kindly. But don't worry. It'll be over soon. The darkness lunged. And Celine closed her eyes, bracing for pain, for the end, for light. Not from her. From everywhere. The clearing exploded with silver radiance so bright it turned the world white. Celine's eyes snapped open. Kaya stood at the edge of the clearing, her small form blazing with power, her golden eyes glowing like twin suns. Don't touch her, the child screamed, and her voice carried the weight of centuries, of ancestors, of something far older and more powerful than a 9-year-old should possess. The ancient wolf staggered back, shielding his eyes. Impossible. She shouldn't be able to. She shouldn't be alone. Rowan's voice cut through the chaos as he emerged from the tree line in his wolf form, massive and terrifying and absolutely furious. The entire pack followed. Not just his pack. Wolves from other territories. Other packs. Dozens of them, flooding the clearing, surrounding Torin's rogues with overwhelming force. And at the front, Astrid, her white eyes blazing. You made a critical mistake, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the clearing. You assumed the pack would choose fear over love, safety over loyalty. She smiled, sharp and satisfied. You were wrong. The wolves attacked. It was over in moments, rogues subdued, Torin pinned beneath 3 massive wolves, the ancient wolf's red eyes wide with shock as Astrid's power wrapped around him like chains. Rowan shifted, becoming human again as he ran to Celine. I've got you, he said, catching her before she collapsed. I've got you. Kaya, Celine gasped. Is safe. Is right here. He turned her so she could see. The child stood there, power still glowing beneath her skin but controlled now, stable. And behind her, watching with expressions of or rather than fear, were the pack. All of them. They came, Celine whispered. They all came. Of course they did, Rowan said roughly. Because we told them the truth. Told them what you did. How you ran not because you were weak, but because you were willing to sacrifice yourself to keep them safe. His hands cupped her face. And that's when they understood. You're not the threat. You never were. Your pack. Tears streamed down Celine's face. I almost got everyone killed. No, Astrid said, approaching them. You reminded everyone what true strength looks like. Not power. Not control. But the willingness to give everything for those you love. She looked at Kaya. And you, child, just proved you're ready. Ready for what? Kaya asked, her voice small again, the ancient power receding. To choose your own future. Astrid gestured and the air shimmered. The prophecy images appeared again, but different now. Not destruction or salvation. Just possibility. 1,000 different futures spreading out like branches on a tree. The prophecy was never about fate, Astrid said quietly. It was about choice. The light bearer and the silver child together have the power to change the world. But how they change it, whether through violence or compassion, fear or love, destruction or creation, that's entirely up to them. She looked at Celine. You have to choose. Both of you. What kind of world do you want to build? Celine looked at Kaya. At this small, brave child who'd survived impossible things and still chose kindness. At Rowan, who'd risked everything to find them both. At the pack, gathered close, no longer afraid but waiting. Trusting. She felt her power stir. Not weak anymore. Not broken. But steady. Warm. Like sunlight after rain. I choose this, Celine said, her voice clear. I choose love. I choose protection. I choose building something better instead of tearing down what's broken. She took Kaya's hand. I choose us. Kaya's face split into a smile. Me too. Their powers flared together. Gold and silver intertwining, creating something new. Not destroying. Creating. The ground beneath them bloomed with flowers that shouldn't exist, silver petals edged in gold, glowing with soft light. The trees around them straightened, their bark healing, their branches reaching higher. Even the wolves felt it, a warmth spreading through the pack bonds, strengthening them, healing old wounds, chasing away the poison of fear and doubt. Magic. Real. Pure. Balanced. The prophecy made manifest. Not as destruction. As hope. Astrid's eyes shimmered. Well then. I suppose we have work to do. Later, after the rogues had been taken away, after Torin had been bound and sent to face judgment from the full council, after the pack had celebrated and wolves from other territories had sworn their support, Celine sat with Rowan on the steps of the house. Kaya was inside, finally sleeping, exhausted but safe. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. You came back, Celine said quietly. Of course I did. Rowan's arm tightened around her. Did you really think I'd let you face that alone? I ran. You sacrificed yourself. There's a difference. He turned her face toward his. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to make that choice again. That's a long time. Good. He kissed her, soft and sure. Because I'm not going anywhere. And neither are you. Celine leaned into him, feeling the truth of it settle into her bones. She'd found it. The thing she'd been searching for her entire life without knowing. Home. Not a place. A person. A family. A choice. And for the first time in 3 years, maybe for the first time ever, Celine let herself believe it would last. 3 months later, the world hadn't ended. It had changed. Celine stood in the first grove, the same sacred space where the council had tested her, but it felt different now. The ancient trees no longer pressed down with judgment, they whispered with welcome. The air didn't hum with threat but with potential. She wasn't alone. Kaya stood beside her, taller now, stronger, her silver magic rippling beneath her skin like moonlight on water. The wolfsbane poisoning had fully cleared from her system, and with Rowan's constant presence and the pack's acceptance, she'd finally begun to heal in ways that went deeper than the physical. Behind them, the pack gathered. Not just Rowan's wolves anymore. Representatives from 6 territories had come. Alphas who'd heard the story and wanted to witness what the prophecy had become. Wolves who'd spent their entire lives believing humans and shifters could never coexist, now watching a human woman wield magic that shouldn't exist. Watching her stand beside an alpha's daughter as an equal. As family. Astrid stepped forward, her white eyes reflecting the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy. "The council has deliberated," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the grove. "The prophecy has been fulfilled, not in destruction, but in transformation. The light bearer and the silver child have chosen their path." She looked at Celine and Kaya. "And in doing so, they've opened a door that's been closed for 500 years. "What door?" Kaya asked, her voice curious but unafraid. "The door between worlds," Astrid replied. "Between human and wolf. Between those with magic and those without. Between the past we've clung to and the future we've been too afraid to imagine." She gestured, and the air shimmered. "You've proven that balance doesn't require separation. That power doesn't require dominance. That the strongest bonds are built not on fear, but on choice." Images formed in the mist, not prophecies this time, but memories. Celine saving Kaya in that rain-soaked alley. Rowan finding them both. The pack learning to trust instead of fear. The moment Celine and Kaya's powers had intertwined, creating something new. "This is what you've built," Astrid said softly. "Not a weapon. Not a threat. But a bridge." The gathered wolves murmured among themselves, and Celine could feel the shift in their energy. Not suspicion. Wonder. One of the visiting alphas, a woman with silver streaking her dark hair, stepped forward. "My territory has 3 human villages on its border. We've coexisted for generations, but always at a distance. Always with walls between us." She looked at Celine. "You're saying those walls don't have to exist?" "I'm saying the walls were built on fear," Celine replied. "Fear that humans would expose wolves. Fear that wolves would harm humans. Fear that magic and mundane couldn't occupy the same space without destroying each other." She held out her hand, letting golden light pool in her palm. "But I'm proof that's not true. I'm human and I carry magic. I was rejected and I survived. I was marked for death and I chose to live." The light intensified. "The walls exist because we keep building them. But we can choose to stop." Silence fell over the grove. Then Kaya spoke, her young voice clear and certain. "My papa always said that being alpha means protecting everyone, not just the ones who are easy to love. Not just the ones who look like you or smell like you or have the same power as you." She looked up at Celine. "Celine taught me that protection goes both ways. That humans can save wolves just like wolves can save humans. That family isn't about blood or species or magic. It's about who shows up when everything's falling apart." The visiting alpha's eyes shimmered. "Out of the mouths of children." "She's not wrong," another alpha said gruffly. "We've been so busy protecting our territories from each other that we've forgotten what we're actually supposed to be protecting. The balance. The old magic. The connections that make us stronger together than we could ever be apart. So, what happens now? Someone asked. Astrid smiled. Now you choose. All of you. Do you cling to the old ways, building walls higher and higher until you suffocate behind them? Or do you take a risk? She looked at Celine and Kaya. Do you build bridges instead? The alphas exchanged glances. Then, one by one, they approached. Knelt before Celine and Kaya. Not in submission. In acknowledgement. In respect. In the recognition that something fundamental had shifted, and they were wise enough to shift with it. When the last alpha had risen, Astrid placed a hand on Celine's shoulder, the marked one, where the scar no longer ached. You'll be called upon, she said quietly. Other packs will hear about what happened here. Some will welcome you. Others will fear you. There will be battles ahead, not with claws and teeth, but with words and wills and the slow, hard work of changing minds that have been set for centuries. I know, Celine said. And you'll do it anyway? Celine looked at Kaya, then back at Rowan, who stood watching with an expression that made her heart swell. Yes, she said simply. Because someone has to start. Someone has to choose differently. Someone has to show that another way is possible. She squeezed Kaya's hand. And apparently, that someone is us. Astrid's smile was proud. Then the world is in better hands than I thought. That evening, after the alphas had departed and the pack had settled into their nightly routines, Celine found herself back on the steps of Rowan's house. Their house, she corrected mentally. Because it was, now. Officially. Rowan had made it clear that she wasn't a guest or a refugee or someone just passing through. She was home. Kaya was curled up on the couch inside, reading a book by firelight, her presence a warm constant that Celine still marveled at every day. Rowan sat beside Celine on the steps, his shoulder pressed against hers, solid and steady and utterly hers. You were magnificent today, he said quietly. Celine huffed a laugh. I was terrified. Magnificently terrified, then. She leaned into him, letting his warmth chase away the last traces of fear. What if we can't do it? What if we can't actually change anything? What if the walls are too high and the fear is too deep and… Then we try anyway, Rowan said, cutting off her spiral. We try because Kaya's watching and she needs to see that change is possible. We try because there are other children out there like her, hiding what they are, terrified they'll be rejected. We try because he turned her face toward his eyes fierce and tender all at once. Because you taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to move forward despite it. Celine's throat tightened. When did you get so wise? When I fell in love with a woman who refused to stay broken. He kissed her forehead. You saved my daughter. You saved me. You saved this entire pack from eating itself alive with fear. His voice dropped. And I will spend the rest of my life grateful that you made that phone call at midnight. Best decision I ever made, Celine whispered. Second best, Rowan corrected. The best was when you decided to stay. And he was right. Running had been instinct. Staying had been choice. And choice, real, conscious, deliberate choice, was what made all the difference. Celine looked up at the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. 3 months ago, she'd been nobody. A rejected human with a mark that screamed worthless to anyone who knew how to read it. A woman who'd survived by being invisible, by taking up as little space as possible, by never hoping for anything more than making it through another day. And now? Now she was a light bearer. A bridge between worlds. A woman who looked at an impossible prophecy and decided to rewrite it through sheer stubborn will and love. Not because she was fearless, but because she'd learned that love was worth being afraid for. Do you ever wonder, she said quietly, if we're doing the right thing? If we're strong enough for what's coming? Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, every single day. But then I watch you with Kaya. I watch you face down alphas twice your size without flinching. I watch you choose compassion when fear would be easier. And I think if she can do this, if she can be this brave, then so can I. Celine turned to look at him fully. I'm not brave. I'm terrified basically all the time. That's what makes you brave, Rowan said. True courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and choosing love anyway. Choosing to show up anyway. Choosing to believe in something better anyway. Inside the house, Kaya laughed at something in her book, the sound light and free and utterly without shadows. She's going to change the world, Celine said softly. You both are, Rowan replied. Already have, really. And maybe he was right. Maybe they had. Not through grand gestures or displays of overwhelming power, but through small choices. Through showing up when it would have been easier to run. Through choosing love when fear seemed safer. Through building bridges when walls would have been simpler. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One heart at a time. Celine stood, offering her hand to Rowan. Come on, she said. Let's go inside. Kaya's probably going to want hot chocolate before bed, and you know she'll con us into letting her stay up too late if we're not careful. Rowan took her hand, rising. She learned that manipulation from you. And the stubbornness from you. We've created a monster. The best kind of monster. They walked inside together, into warmth and light and the sound of a child's laughter. Into a home that had been built not on bloodlines or territory or ancient claims, but on choice. On love. On the radical belief that broken things could heal and rejected things could be reclaimed and impossible things could become real if you just refused to give up on them. And somewhere in the darkness beyond Packlands, other wolves watched. Some with hope. Some with fear. Some with anger at what Celine and Kaya represented. The future was coming. Whether the old guard was ready for it or not. And at the center of that future stood a human woman who carried sunlight in her veins and a child who wielded moonlight like a promise. Together, they would reshape the world. Not through force, but through the quiet, revolutionary act of choosing love over fear. Every single day. So here's my question for you, listening to this story in the quiet of wherever you are. Would you have made that call at midnight? Would you have saved a child who wasn't yours, knowing it would cost you everything? Would you have stood your ground when the world told you to run? Would you have chosen love when fear was easier? Would you have believed, truly believed, that one person could make a difference? Or would you have looked the other way? Kept yourself safe? Let someone else be the hero? There's no judgment in asking. Only truth. Because Celine wasn't special. She was just a woman who refused to let the world tell her she didn't matter. Who chose to show up even when she was terrified. Who loved fiercely and fought harder and never, ever stopped believing that broken things could heal. And maybe, just maybe, that's all any of us need to be. Not fearless. Not perfect. Just willing. Willing to make the call. To show up. To choose love. One impossible moment at a time. If this story lit something inside you, if Celine's courage or Kaya's hope or Rowan's fierce protection made you feel something real, then subscribe to Shayla's Romance Library. Because here, we tell stories about women who refuse to stay broken. About love that's worth fighting for. About the revolutionary act of choosing hope when the world demands fear. We tell stories that burn. That heal. That remind you that you're stronger than you think. And that even at midnight, when everything feels impossible, one choice can change everything. Hit that subscribe button. Because the next story is waiting. And trust me, you won't want to miss it.